Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truth. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. Last week, the CCP's head Xi Jinping traveled to Shenzhen City in Guangdong province to attend a grand ceremony to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone. And Shenzhen is somewhat an icon for the CCP's economic reform and opening up to the outside world. People started to ponder, does this mean that Xi Jinping will resume Deng Xiaoping's more right-wing economic policy and apply the brake to his left-turning craziness in recent years? In other words, will Xi Jinping turn left or turn right? And what does his choice mean for the CCP and China? Today, let's discuss these important issues. I will also respond to a few questions from you viewers about my last show, so please make sure you stick around till the end. First of all, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and please check if you are still subscribed if you have, because a viewer told me she was unsubscribed without her knowledge. I'm not sure how widespread this phenomenon is, but many people said my channel and videos deserve much more viewers and views, so please do check and help. Now, let's talk about Xi Jinping's Southern Tour. You may or may not know that the CCP's second-generation leader, Deng Xiaoping, made a very famous trip to Shenzhen and some other cities 28 years ago in 1992. That trip was later referred to as Deng Xiaoping's Southern Trip and became an iconic event for the CCP. Why was it so important? Because after the Tiananmen massacre in 1989, some Western countries once imposed sanctions on China, and China's reforms and opening up was halted, especially at the revolutions of 1989 in Europe and around the time of the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. As the so-called chief designer of the reforms and opening up policy, Deng Xiaoping, who had already officially retired, began his Southern Tour in January 1992 and visited quite some cities, including Shenzhen. He delivered his famous speech in Shenzhen, saying that Shenzhen government should be bolder in carrying out the reforms and opening up, daring to experiment and find a good or a new path, etc. So Deng Xiaoping's Southern Tour had put China back on the path of reform and opening up, and ensured the fast growth of China's economy for the following decades. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, which is the first special economic zone in China. So Xi Jinping's visit to this city and the fact that he would deliver an important speech at the celebration ceremony would of course make people wonder, does this mean that Xi Jinping wants to stop following Mao Zedong and start to follow Deng Xiaoping instead? Xi Jinping made a lengthy speech for nearly an hour on October 13th. He praised Shenzhen's achievements and vowed that we will steadfastly pursue a mutually beneficial and win-win strategy of openness to draw momentum from the world for development and enable China's development to better benefit the world. However, his boring speech made less of an impression on people compared to his frequent coughs and long pauses during the speech.
想问题，办事情。
China Central Television did a live streaming of his speech on YouTube, and whenever he coughed, they turned the camera to the audience to avoid having people see him coughing. Later, the live streamed video was taken down. Although people had been speculating whether Xi Jinping's Southern tour meant that he would stop turning to the left and turn right, his speech didn't give out this message. Instead, he stressed that the construction of special economic zones in the new era should hold high the great banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics. We must insist on leadership of the party and maintain the correct direction. We must insist on and improve the socialist system with Chinese characteristics and push the socialist system with Chinese characteristics to mature and take shape through practicing reform. So it was very clear that his main message is to stick to socialism with Chinese characteristics. But there does exist a subtle change. Several months ago, in early May, when faced with mounting pressure from the US-China trade war and the pandemic, Xi Jinping introduced a concept called internal circulation for the Chinese economy, when more and more companies were moving out of China due to the worsening environment. At that stage, many people saw this so-called internal circulation as a sign of Xi Jinping preparing to go back to Mao Zedong's path of self-reliance and hard work and cut its economic ties with the world. However, this time in Shenzhen, apart from mentioning internal circulation, Xi also mentioned dual circulation that includes both internal circulation and a circulation with the outside world. Perhaps Xi had realized that mere internal circulation was not enough to sustain China's economy. This also reflects Xi Jinping's awkward situation of not knowing what to do or where to go. Some people say that he is placing one foot on the accelerator and another one on the brake. And it seems that is exactly what he is doing. Prior to Xi Jinping's Southern tour, the CCP released a 5-year plan for Shenzhen with a very long title called Implementation Plan for the Pilot Comprehensive Reform in Shenzhen for the Construction of a Pioneering Demonstration Zone of Socialism with Chinese Characteristics. Through this long plan, people can see that the CCP plans to set up a so-called Greater Bay Area that includes the entire Guangdong province, Hong Kong, and Macau, intending to use Shenzhen to replace Hong Kong's position as a financial center, to attract international capital initially flowing into Hong Kong, as well as Hong Kong's talents and industries. In the meantime, the CCP also plans to attract foreign investment, foreign talent, and technology, and continue to promote digital RMB and the internationalization of the renminbi. I did a program about CCP's digital currency and electronic payment system 2 months ago, since really developed as I had discussed before. If you haven't watched that one, please go back and watch it. Anyway, several days before Xi Jinping's visit, Shenzhen City launched a 10 million yuan program which encouraged people to download the digital wallet to their cell phones. People who downloaded the digital wallet could participate in a raffle, and 50,000 winners could each gain 200 yuan digital money in their digital wallet. So we can see that Shenzhen City is really accelerating the process of rolling out the digital currency and electronic payment program. But the problem is, can Shenzhen really replace Hong Kong and become the next regional international financial center? The CCP destroyed Hong Kong and ruined its status as an international financial center because it destroyed Hong Kong's freedom first. Without the essential freedom of speech, press, and information, how can a CCP-controlled Shenzhen become an international financial center? It seems that Xi Jinping and his CCP colleagues just can't get this very basic idea. Some people also say that Deng Xiaoping's motto is, "It doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white as long as it can catch mice." And Xi Jinping's motto is, "You can go catch mice regardless of whether you are a black or white cat. However, all the mice you catch need to be turned into the red cat." It sounds like a joke, but that is what's really happening in China. And I discussed this in my recent program called "Will the CCP Start Seizing Private Properties in China Again? What if the CCP falls?" As a matter of fact, I don't see that there is that much of a difference between Deng Xiaoping and Xi Jinping. Sure, Deng Xiaoping talked about 韬光养晦, which means hide of our capabilities and bide our times. Deng Xiaoping asked the CCP to bide our time only because the CCP was not that strong then. As soon as it is strong enough, or it thinks it is strong enough, it will show its muscle to the world, as liberating or conquering the world is the final goal of communism anyway. And that's why the CCP has started becoming more and more aggressive in recent years under Xi Jinping. Maybe Xi Jinping doesn't know this. No matter if he turns left or turns right, he will meet with a dead end and take the CCP to destruction. If he turns left, as he has been doing in recent years, the world will see more clearly the true color of the CCP and start to fight back, and the people inside China will sooner or later pushed to a point where they will say enough is enough and rise up to overthrow the CCP. If he turns right, it means he will adopt a more transparent, open, and free system. If people have more freedom to gain true information, especially information about the CCP's numerous astonishing crimes, if people have more freedom to associate, they will also see the evil nature of the CCP, organize themselves, and overthrow the CCP. There's another thing to watch regarding Xi Jinping's southern tour, which is this trip was suddenly cut short. It was expected that after Xi Jinping's visit to Shenzhen, he would go to Guangdong and perhaps Zhuhai as well, as those cities had issued very strict security control measures, making people believe that Xi would visit those cities too, as they are very close to Shenzhen and were once on Deng Xiaoping's southern tour list. However, Xi's projected 6-day trip was cut short to only 3 days, and people say there could be 4 possibilities. 1, he's ill. After his frequent cough was broadcast live, people have been asking whether he had also caught COVID-19 or the CCP virus. The CCP virus started in China. If many other world leaders like Donald Trump and Boris Johnson could get it, why couldn't Xi Jinping, right? 2, something was wrong in Guangdong. It was reported that new CCP virus cases were found in a resort in Guangdong, so Xi Jinping might feel that it was not safe to visit this city. 3. Something was wrong in Beijing, and Xi Jinping had to go back in a hurry to deal with it. The CCP's highly anticipated fifth plenary session will be held in Beijing at the end of this month. This will be the last plenary session before the CCP's next National Congress, when the next batch of party leaders will be decided. The importance is similar to the US election, when a new president will be elected. It is no longer a secret that Xi Jinping has encountered huge opposition within the party. Some even say that there were coups happening. For Xi Jinping, whether he can continue to maintain his power is a matter of life and death, so he definitely can't afford any mishaps. 4. Something was wrong in the South China Sea region, as military actions may be needed. While Xi Jinping was visiting Shenzhen, the U.S. Reagan Carrier Strike Group, which had already entered Indian Ocean, suddenly turned around and headed back to the South China Sea. In the meantime, the Philippines announced that it had dispatched a maritime militia to protect Filipino fishermen. The Philippines has been claiming sovereignty over several islands within Huangyang Island and applied for international arbitration in 2016, which was rejected by the CCP. Also, the Communist Party of the Philippines, which was listed by the Philippine government as an illegal organization, announced on October 14th that it would attack Chinese companies in the Philippines, including state-run companies involved in construction projects in the South China Sea that are under U.S. sanctions. So, some commentators in Taiwan made this speculation that the Philippines may attempt to claim sovereignty over the Huangyang Island again, and in this case, clashes may happen between the Philippines and the CCP, and the U.S. might get involved to offer protection to the Philippines. According to Taiwanese commentators, the fact that the official website of the U.S. Pacific Fleet posted a video showing the USS Ronald Reagan transiting the Strait of Malacca with a lot of soldiers conducting maritime strike exercises shows that the U.S. wants to show to the CCP that it is ready to go to war with the CCP. By the way, Xi Jinping also told CCP's Marines to focus on preparing to go to war during his southern tour this time, when he visited a military base in Guangdong province on October 13th. So, with both the US and the CCP ready to go to war, will war break out in the South China Sea? And that's why the Taiwanese TV station listed this as the fourth possibility for Xi Jinping's sudden return to Beijing. As the head of the CCP's military, he needs to tackle the tension in the South China Sea area. Next, I'd like to respond to several questions regarding my last show about the Quit the CCP movement. One viewer asked, even if they quit their CCP memberships, how do we know if he still has loyalty to the CCP? How can the ex-CCP members prove they are not loyal to the CCP anymore? Another viewer left a comment saying that, I know quite a few Chinese who found their names in the list but never put it there, so it seems that your organization puts names on the list without asking people. Well, this is my response. This Quit the CCP movement started in 2005 as a spiritual and symbolic one to help the Chinese people to see through the CCP's evil nature and its various crimes in history, to help them make a choice between the evil CCP and justice and conscience, and to undo their deadly pledges to the CCP when they raised their right hands in front of the CCP's bloody flank and vowed that they were willing to sacrifice their entire life for the CCP. The people who started the movement, as well as all the volunteers who got involved, believed that the CCP's fundamental ideology is anti-universe and anti-humanity. Its history is one of killing and destruction, and its ultimate goal is to destroy mankind. The CCP is controlled by an evil specter, a Satan, and heaven were eliminated one day. And when heaven eliminates the CCP, who will go with the CCP? It's people who once vowed that they belonged to the CCP. So if someone agrees to quit or chooses to quit, he or she no longer belongs to the CCP and can be saved and kept when the day of the CCP's elimination comes. You know, back in 2005, when this movement first started, the CCP was very powerful. It is still very powerful in many people's eyes today. If you ask people inside China to quit with their real names, maybe 95% dare not to. However, as this is a choice made in people's hearts to show to heaven, it doesn't matter if they use an alias, as long as their choice is real and heaven can see their hearts. So that's the philosophy behind this movement. People may choose to believe it or not to believe it, but all those volunteers believe in it and act upon it. As this is something to show to heaven, they are very serious with it. People are allowed to publish their declarations with aliases. So if you see a name on the list that is exactly the same as your name, don't assume that name belongs to you or somebody has published a declaration for you without your knowledge, as that declaration belongs to somebody else who also has the same name. Also, declarations are published without any other details like addresses, ages, photos, or gender. So there is no way that you can claim that a declaration belongs to you just because the name is the same as yours. For people in the West, you might think it's super easy. It's a super easy thing just to type into a computer a declaration, and one could type in as many as one wants. But in real life, it's not the case at all. Let me give you a real example. I myself have a close relative who joined the CCP when he was only 18 years old and had been a party secretary for many years before he retired. He stayed with me for 6 months around 2007 when I was still in Australia. I gave him many materials to read, including how the CCP has been killing people to harvest their organs, etc. He didn't say that he didn't believe that the CCP has been killing. However, he said that each emperor killed a lot of people in history, and it is a necessary evil if this emperor or this party wants to maintain its power. So I failed to convince him to quit after 6 months' effort. 4 years ago, this relative who was already in his 80s came to Australia again. I happened to go back to Australia at that time too. I stayed a week with him again and again tried to ask him to quit. This time he didn't argue with me, but said that if I could find an Australian wife for him to enable him to gain a green card to stay in Australia, he would surely quit. If I couldn't, and he needed to go back to China, he doesn't dare to quit. Where could I find an Australian wife for an old man who could only sit in a wheelchair and couldn't walk anymore? Plus, I don't believe one's quitting the CCP should have a precondition of me finding a wife for him. So, this time, I failed to convince him again. So my point is, while the CCP is still in power, for any Chinese person who agrees to quit, it is a very big deal. If they don't agree with what you say or they don't trust you, they won't quit. Now, of course, with the US government banning CCP members, some people may pretend that they want to quit. I can only say that as volunteers of the Quit the CCP movement, they can't control people's hearts or actions. If people choose to cheat the US government, it is up to the US government to figure out a way to tackle it. On the other hand, if one wants to migrate to the US, it means that he or she thinks that the US is better than China. In this sense, I don't think they will think it is wise to continue to do evil to the CCP. As I said in my last show, the tide is turning and shifting. Anybody who is sensible enough should be able to see this and choose not to do evil for the CCP anymore. I hope I have addressed the questions. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Truth saves lives. Please subscribe to and share my channel and check out my other videos. Thank you. See you next time.